Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at a 3D printer that is made by a company that we all know, which is SUNLU, which makes great filament that I'm sure most people are using or have used in the past. So even though they're very popular in the filament world, we haven't really seen any kind of 3D printers out of them, but here we have one that's called the S8, and this is a FDM printer, and it boasts quite an impressive build volume of 310 by 310 by 400 millimeters. So this is a large format printer. So in this video, we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. All right, so let's get started. Alright guys, so this is quite a large box. To be honest, it's much larger than normal printers, and I think it's because it's mostly assembled. Flip it around, maybe we can see here. So we have the model S8. Here's the size of the packaging. The weight is 12 kilograms. That's the printer, so it weighs quite a bit, about 25 pounds or so. And that is the packaging weight there. So definitely keep in mind that this box is quite large, and this might matter depending on where you live in the world. All right, so let's get this box open. So the top layer looks like we have a pretty nice layer of foam here. We can see how the printer is nestled in all this nice soft foam everywhere. So it appears to be pretty much built. So that's a huge plus. If you're, kind of intimidated by building things, this is definitely a good printer because it looks like everything is plugged in and assembled. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here. So we have the US power plug, a little baggie of things like glue, a USB cable to connect to the computer, and stop switch looks like an extra one, some zip ties, micro SD card with an adapter to USB, manual, which they call the guidebook, actually looks very nice. We have the specifications, parameters of the printer, very nicely laid out pictures. This general list here showing you what all the parts are and what they are called. So here's our installation. It's only 3 steps. It also looks like we have to build a filament holder. All right, very nice instructions, very detailed. So if you're just getting started with 3D printing, this is definitely looks like a great printer to start with so far. And it looks like SUNLU took the time to understand and present the information more detailedly for people that are just starting out. All right, so here it looks like we have the filament holder. Well, I guess I'll grab a couple things here. A little kit here that we have to build that holds the spool, so it doesn't look like it's too hard to do. And here we have some tools and hardware, some extra things in there, some cutters also. All right, so let's go ahead and take this first layer of foam. Okay, so it looks like we have a piece here, some more pieces here. So just looking at it, I think this printer is completely assembled because we have all the plugs that are actually plugged into the gantry here, and we have zip ties. Zip tied all around, so it looks like it's all one piece right now. So I think what they want us to do is take out the whole thing because the base and the gantry here are tethered together with the wiring. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and try to pull out the whole thing. Yep, and that's definitely what they want you to do, is pull it out just like that. And below the printer we have a spool of white PLA, and that's very nice that they included half a spool here, which is really nice. You can really print a reasonable amount with this size. So that's everything for the box. All right, and so it looks like that is how you pull out this printer. So if you guys can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zip ties holding it together, and it's kind of sandwiching in this foam here in between. So let's go ahead and grab our snippers that come with the printer. It's very nice that they include these, and we're just going to snip off these zip ties. So the gantry should lift up. Okay, it does. And we can take out the other foam pieces. And as you guys can see, we have Z motors here, the dual motors already plugged in. All the connectors are, looks like, hot glued everywhere. So they made it where you don't even have to really plug anything in, looks like. So I think the next step, what we need to do is just lift this up and get the foam out. Now we're just gonna stand it up. And over here, there's a couple holes that it'll line up with. So it is quite easy because it just sits on its own right on the channel here. So they made it really easy for you to combine these two parts together. So if we look over here, there's actually a T bracket right here. And it looks like we need to install a T-nut and a bolt through here, and it's on both sides. So let's grab our bag of hardware, take a quick look at it. So we have a clean out needle for the nozzle. Looks like some extra parts here with some PTFE tubing, a coupler, and some bolts. So it looks like this is what we're looking for. The M5-8 slider with a couple bolts. And also we're gonna need those M5-25s, 2 bolts on each side that go from the bottom up. We also do get a little set of Allen wrenches and a 10 and 8 millimeter wrench. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this little kit here. So instead of T-nuts, looks like we have some kind of self-holding sliding nuts, looks like. So it appears that before standing the whole gantry up, we needed to slide these in. So let's go ahead and put this back down. And they actually do have a marking right here about where it needs to be. So all we're gonna do is just slide it into the channel, just like that. And then get to our mark here. That's where the bolt's gonna go. Same thing for this side. Sliding nuts are in. We can go ahead and stand them back up. And exactly where they mark that white line is where it lines up with this hole. So they really thought this through, guys. So now we're gonna grab the little bolt and the Allen wrench provided, and we're gonna put the bolt into the T-bracket there. So you don't want to tighten that up at all yet, because we still need to put the 2 bolts underneath, and we want this thing to move a little bit if it needs to. So I'm going to go ahead and start this bolt also on this side. All right, so we kind of drop down so you guys can see a little better, but we need to put 2 bolts on each end here of this gantry. So we're going to grab the 4 bolts. So it looks like there's enough room here to just start it by hand without needing to even tilt the printer. Sure enough, it is. And I'm quite pleasantly surprised but that SUNLU here thought of pretty much everything, even the installation process. This is a very good experience so far in assembly. They made it very simple for you. So we are going to lift it just a little bit so we can get our Allen wrench in there and tighten the bolts up. So we're not going to tighten them yet. We're just going to run them down for now. So now we need to do the other side. All right, so I got these run down. Now we can go ahead and snug them up. And you definitely want to snug these up really good because you got a really tall gantry. So that one's tight. Now I'm going to tighten this one up. So now we can go ahead and tighten the bolts that we installed earlier that's on the T-bracket. So you want to check your other bolts just in case they are loose, but on this printer everything is very tight. So this printer really feels like they took the extra care to assemble everything because everything looks very tidy and solid. And believe it or not, guys, that is the assembly process. So it's quite simple. Go ahead and flip this guy around. Quite a unique machine, and it's very, very deep. So keep in consideration, it does have pretty deep profile. All right, so even though the assembly is simple, there are a few things that you do need to check. And it's quite important. So the first thing is you want to make sure that your frame is very level. So make sure you have a level table. And if your frame is wobbling around anywhere, you might have to loosen some of the main bolts around and get it level and then tighten them back up. That's one thing. The next thing that's very important is you want to check all your rollers. So there's a bunch of rollers under the bed, and the way you're going to do that is you're just going to move the bed. And so it does look like it has a little bit of wobble. So we're going to need to adjust the rollers. And there's some rollers here also, and then some rollers that go up and down on this Z-axis channel. So let's go ahead and take off the plastic off of the bed. So we do get 4 large spring clamps, and it looks like it's a bag housing the glass part of the bed. The glass just simply goes on top here. And on my bed here, I don't know exactly what's going on, but the glass is not sitting flat here. So maybe the aluminum here is not completely flat or just over compressed in one area, but that's not what it looks like. So something is not completely straight. Not sure exactly what it is, but we'll figure it out here shortly. Clamping down feels like it's flat now. And I think the way these clamps go, we got 2 in the back and 2 in the front. Yes. In any case, the good part about having glass is that even if the aluminum is a little bit warped, the glass will keep it quite flat at the print surface. I think the next thing what we should do is we should adjust these rollers on the bed because they do need adjusting. And then we also need to check our power supply make sure it's on the correct voltage. That's very important before getting started. And we'll go ahead and check all the rollers up here also, make sure they're all moving correctly and not too tight or too loose. So let's start by putting the printer on its side. Hopefully I got enough room here. So here we are looking at the bottom. Here we can see we have 2 channels that the bed runs on. And I really like this design, definitely makes it a lot more sturdy. And we have 3 rollers on each channel. So we have 2 stationary, the eccentric adjusting rollers in the middle. So let's move the bed around a bit and see which one is loose. So it looks like the bottom one maybe here. I guess they're both a little bit loose, the bottom and the top. So we can snug both of them up just a bit. What you're gonna do is grab your 10mm wrench that's provided. And we're just going to turn it just a bit till it gets tighter. And same thing here. Now what you want to do is you want to tighten it barely, you know, where it's tight enough where it has no play, but it's loose enough where it can spin really easily. So the best way to check that is to just grab a wheel and drag it, like do a little burnout. And if it's spinning pretty easily, that means you don't have it too tight, and you can check all of them like that. So these are perfect now. So what I did is just snugged up just barely, and you want to be careful, you know, which way you go because it's all connected together. So if you do too much on this one, you might get tight here, but you'll get loose up here. And then, you know, you'll be trying to compensate it with this one. And then you're going to have everything way too tight. The thing to take away here is you want to try to be as loose and as free as possible. That way your wheels don't wear out really fast. And also you're going to have a very smooth motion. If they're too tight, what's going to happen is the bed is going to jerk a little bit, and that's going to affect the print quality. So while we're under here, let's go ahead and take a look. Looks like we have insulation on the bed, and that is a great thing to have. So I'm really happy to see that. For how large this bed is, and plus having a glass surface, it's definitely going to take a little bit to heat it, but with this insulation, that's going to help it out tremendously. So we do have really nice squishy feet down here, and just a really nice clean build. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but all the wires on this printer are managed very well. Everything is tucked away and just neatly presented. So it looks like we have all of our electronics under here, our power supply and the control board. So that's kind of an interesting design, and that makes it where our power switch is back here also, right here, and our cable will plug in right there. So while we're under here, let's go ahead and plug in our power cord. And it goes just like that. So it's kind of a little bit an awkward place to have the switch, but I think you can probably reach it here from the side with your finger. And if we go down here, we can see there's a little hole here, and that's actually where you switch the voltage on the power supply from 110 to 220. So mine right now is set on 230, so I need to switch that to 110. So don't forget to do this. Depending on what voltage you need, you want to go ahead and switch that to the correct voltage. All right, so now you're looking at the back of the printer, and the reason we're here is we're going to look at this back x-axis. You want to adjust these rollers also the same way like I talked about on the bottom. You just want to have a very light, slight friction. Actually, mine are already adjusted perfectly, so I don't really have to do anything here. Now, there's also 3 rollers on these brackets here, and the eccentric nuts are on the inside, and you also want to check these. So again, mine are actually adjusted perfectly. So, but if you do have to adjust them, you just grab your 10mm wrench and you turn it, and that's it. And again, guys, looser is better than tighter. Tighter will mess things up really fast, but you definitely want to get it to the point where you have no wobble. Now, because this design has the dual Z-axis rods, that should eliminate any kind of wobble between the 2 sides. All right, so now that this thing is together, let's go ahead and take a little closer look at the S8. So we're gonna start here at the top. There's not too much going up here, pretty thin brace. Now we do have some brackets here, and it looks like little covers here at the end of the Z rod, and that's just to kind of guide it. That's quite an interesting design. Now these Z rods are not tethered together. So what that means is if one motor is off from the other, you're gonna have a unleveled x-axis. So that's actually one disadvantage to a dual z-axis motor. You have to make sure it's leveled every time before you print. And that's actually quite easy to do. You just need 2 little props. But in any case, we'll go over that later when we start a print. So let's go ahead and look at this extruder. The extruder mechanism itself is plastic. Feels pretty good. To be honest, I wish this was metal or aluminum, but you know, you could upgrade this really easily. So we have nice metal couplers, PTFE tubing and wiring going to the hot end here. Now the hot end rides on a 2020 rail. So we have the brake cooler fan up front and an axial parts cooling fan on the side. And on the bottom we have silicone sock on the heat block. Also, we do have a filament detector, which is nice to have for long prints especially. And you're definitely going to want this on a printer like this with long print times because of the large size. So we have dual Z-axis motors on the bottom. bottom, and we have our Z-axis switch here on the right. On the very back here, we can see the Y-axis motor and the Y-axis end-stop switch. One thing I did notice is that this belt is a lot larger than normally. So that's a nice touch there, because this is your normal size belt here, and the Y-axis has quite a bit larger one. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is you want to check all your belts and how it travels. Make sure the belt is running center on the pulley. Same thing up front. So there's no binding or anything funny. Same thing on the hot end. You want to make sure your belts are running nice and true. So the bottom frame of the printer is made up of channels. So we got this 2040 and then a couple 2020s, which the bed rides on, and another 2040 here. And then we have this main box here that houses our electronics. So everything is pretty straightforward, and it does sit off the table quite a bit. I definitely like that it has these large rubber feet that help with noise dampening and vibrations. So on the side of the control panel here, we have a fan that cools off the electronics. We have a rotary knob with the old school display. And right below that, we have an SD card slot and the place to plug in the USB cable to connect to your computer. And here right on the front, we can see that we have all the specs. Here are some of the features: filament detection, resume printing, and a heating platform. And here we have some of the cautions. And also there's a sticker here that says to switch the voltage, which we have done already. And on this side, we just have some venting holes. And that's it. Very clean and nice design. And I know I already mentioned this, guys, but this is quite a large printer. It's kind of hard to show you guys the size, but it's quite a big footprint on the table, especially the depth wise. You can see how far it goes from end to end there. So, and this is a 310 millimeter bed. So, all right, so it seems like a very solid printer, very easy to assemble. So for next part, we need to plug it in and then home it, make sure everything works, and then level the bed. But before we do that, we need to go ahead and build the spool holder. And that should not be very hard to do. Let's go ahead and take the parts out. 4 or 5 pieces and some hardware. Now before we put them together, we need to take off all the protective layers off the acrylic, and these could be a little bit annoying sometimes to pull off, but it looks like on this one it shouldn't be too hard. All right, and once we get that off, we can see we got a really nice transparent acrylic part. So I'm going to go ahead and peel the rest of them, and then we'll put it together. All right, so we got all our pieces. So the way it goes together is quite simple. Just going to put this piece into there. But before you do that, let's grab the hardware. And it's actually quite simple. The little nut goes into here, just like that. So you're going to put your little nuts in there. Then we're going to put it together, and then the bolt will go through the other side into the nut. Quite simple. And so there's 4 corners just like this. Then we're going to use an Allen wrench to tighten them up. But be very careful to not over tighten, because acrylic snaps really easily. So you just want to barely snug it. And just like that, the spool holder is built. Then this piece here is just going to go on top, and your spool holder is going to go inside of it. So quite simple, not very hard. All right, I think we're ready to power this thing on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the power button. I got it plugged in. Now make sure you have the right voltage. Can't stress that enough, especially if you live where you have the 220. You don't want to be set on 110, 115. So the way you access the power button is actually here through the side. You can feel it with your finger. It's kind of a little bit inconvenient. You definitely don't want to go up here and try to turn it on, because you know the bed moves around here. You want to probably get a habit of turning it on through the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it. All right, and the printer powers on. Got a SUNLU logo there coming up. And there's actually also a light under here. There's a little light underneath the print head. Well, that's really neat. Okay, so when the printer came on, the fans came on. So this cooling fan here for the electronics, and the heat break fan is also on. Now the first thing we want to do is check if all of our axes work. But before we do that, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and run the bed down a bit, just in case, because we don't want our nozzle to hit the glass. Or better yet, we can just go ahead and pull the glass off for now. That'll be more safe. So this is what our UI looks like. So we have the nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, then the axes positions, flow rate. Here we have the printer name S8, and it says it's ready. So okay, so if we click the knob, we can choose from certain things. So we need to go to prepare, I guess, move axes, so we can move them individually, or we can out of home. So let's go ahead. Oh, okay, and it actually looks like it has a bed leveling assistant here. So we will have to manually level the bed, but it looks like this thing will move the nozzle around for us. All right, so let's out of home first and see what happens. And there we go. So we have the x-axis, and that switch is right there. Okay, so now we have the y-axis, and yeah, these things are moving kind of slow actually. Okay. All right, guys, so you're definitely gonna need a lot more room than I thought. So what was happening there, I was hitting the back of the wall, and you guys can see how much that thing goes past. Wow, this thing is extra deep. You definitely need a lot of room for this printer. Now the Z-axis is going down, and the switch for that is right there. Now we will need to calibrate the Z-axis because it has the dual leads. It should stop once it hits that switch. And there it goes. All right, so it looks like all of our axes work, and we definitely figured out that we need a lot more room depth wise. This thing is quite long. Now the good part is that this overhang here, the foot is kind of more towards the back, so it could overhang off of the table. So now that it's all the way back, I'm going to move it as close as I can to the wall, about right there, and I guess we'll have to leave it right there. So our nozzle landed quite close to the bed, which is about right where it's at. So the next thing we want to do is we want to find something to calibrate our Z-axis. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the same distance from here to here on both sides. So it doesn't appear that the printer was included with any kind of measuring apparatus, so we're just going to use this spool part here as our basis for leveling out the Z-axis. So what you want to do is you want to go up a little manually. You're going to have to twist them both from the back on the couplers until it gets high enough. When we can fit this, we're just going to lower it down until it hits it. So once it hits it, that's good right there. And now we want to see, this one's too loose right now, while this one is nice and snug. So we want them both to be snug. So now this is snug. So you want to get them as close as possible. And the reason you want to do this is because once you level your bed, it's going to be leveled according to this layout here. So there we go. So once you're happy with spacing on both sides, then we can go ahead and home it again. And now we're going to have a true straight x-axis line. So now that we know that our x-axis is squared, we can level our bed to that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and release the steppers because I want to make sure that my glass is going to be okay. So we're going to go to prepare and then disable steppers. And that's going to cut everything loose where we can move everything around. So I just want to center it up and see if we have enough room for our glass. Looks like we do. So let's go ahead and put our glass in there. So the only reason I'm taking these extra precautions is I don't want the nozzle to hit the glass. I'm gonna go ahead and clip it in. So now that the glass is on and it looks like it's far away enough from the bed, and if you have to run the knobs down where it, lowers the bed a bit if you think it's too close. So let's go ahead and go back into prepare, and then bed leveling, we'll choose that, and then it's going to start our bed leveling process. So you're going to need a sheet of paper. I'm just using regular printing paper. Okay, so on the screen here it says click to begin. I'm going to go ahead and click it and get my paper ready. Let's go into the first point. All right, so it looks like our gap is too large there. I'm going to move up the camera so you guys can see a little better. So what we're going to do, we're going to loosen this side until we have some kind of contact. It's our paper contacts. Now with my experience, if it's that loose, you don't want to get this close yet. Leave a bigger gap. And the reason for that is because this will be too high later. So just kind of get it semi-close with a bigger gap and then go to the next one. Because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go over at least 3 to 4 times to get this thing level. So now we're going to our next corner. So this one is too tight, surprisingly. Loosen it up here and go to the next one. You're just going to keep clicking the rotary knob and it goes to the next corner. Let's see what this one's like. Also, actually this one's very tight. Alright, so we loosen that up. Okay, and this one's too loose. So let's get it closer to the nozzle. You got a nice little drag. So you want your paper to drag just barely between the glass and the nozzle. Now another thing that is maybe quite important and probably is better to do, especially for this size bed, is you want to preheat everything. So now that I know everything's pretty close, I'm going to go ahead and preheat it. So I clicked it again and it's saying leveling done. It does take a while to get back to where, to the home. So in the menus, you're going to go to prepare, and then you're going to go to preheat PLA. And so once you do that, it's going to start preheating. All right, so now the nozzle and the bed are preheated, and now we can go ahead and do the bed leveling again. And again, you want to do the bed leveling at least 3 to 4 times. Snug it up just a bit. Next one, you just want to have a very, very light drag. There we go. And this one's good too. So I'm going to go ahead and go a few more times, and then our bed will be leveled, and then we can go ahead and put some filament in. All right guys, so now that we got our bed leveled, it's time to put in our filament. So let's go ahead and open this sample spool up. So the way it goes is quite simple. I'm just going to put the shaft through the spool, lay down in there just like that. So then we're going to grab our filament and we're going to feed it through the detector and then into the extruder. So just like that. and then the extruder is going to push it through the tube and then out the hot end. So I'm going to manually push it through there, and you should be able to see some starting to come out. And there it goes. So let's go ahead and out of this bag here, grab our glue stick, because I think we're definitely going to need it. And then we're also going to need our micro SD card, and that is inside this adapter, and it's unmarked. I'm not sure how big it is. So we're going to plug it in here, probably upside down. It's actually right side up. All right, so we're going to click on the knob, and then we're going to go all the way down and print from SD card. We have a file here called SUNLU. Okay, so we have video, software, and model. So we're going to click on model. And we have a couple test cheat codes, 1 and 2. I guess we'll start with 1. I have no idea what they are, so hopefully they're going to be something reasonable here. And there we go, it says bed heating. So we can see there it's preheating to 200 and the bed is going to 50 from 40. So for some reason the preheat on PLA is set to 40. Alright, so our print should start here shortly. The only thing I'm thinking is, do I need to put some glue on there or not? So I guess we could start without the glue. Well, nah. Usually with a glass like this, you always want glue. So I'm just gonna put a big X here of glue, just in case. So, all right. So it looks like it's starting. And there it goes. Okay, so it's building a raft. Okay, so looks like it's sticking. So in the beginning there, I was having a hard time because the filament, I guess I didn't push it through good enough. But since it's building a raft, it might actually stick. We'll see. It did hit some of the glue that I put down there. But yeah, it appears to be working and everything's fine. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it's printing, but we will find out shortly. Alright, so as this thing's printing, let's check out the menu here so we can see. If we click on the rotary button, we can see we have a few options here as it's printing. If we go to the very bottom, we can see it says stop print, pause print, and then language. So we have tune and control. If you go to tune, here you can control the speed, the Z-axis offset, so you can actually go up and down a little bit as you start printing. That's a nice feature. And you can control the nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, the fan speed, the flow rate, and also change filament. And if you go to control, change the temperature, the motion, and then the filament. So there's quite a few options here. So overall, pretty featured system for this kind of setup. And I'm guessing this progress bar right here, it fills up as it's completing. So yeah, everything looks good and it's printing away. So I'm just gonna let it print and we'll see what comes out of this print. But so far everything's looking really good. And you guys can see how far this sticks out here. I mean, we got a lot of real estate. So just keep that in mind. All right, so our first print is done and I think something went wrong. And you guys can probably see there's a bunch of little blobs on it. So it's stuck to the bed quite well, that's good. So the glue worked. Comes off quite easy. And if you guys see all these little blobs, this is where the nozzle just randomly stopped and then continued. So I'm not sure what that was all about. So it did not turn out very good at all. Unfortunately, we can't really see the quality of the print on this. See if the raft comes off. So I got the raft off and the bottom looks pretty good. I guess I'm going to try the other test file that was included and hopefully that one doesn't create these little blobs. If it does, I'm going to have to cancel it and I'm just going to go ahead and slice my own and hopefully then we can get a really good print. Okay, so it looks like we're having the same problem because it's freezing. Oh, that's unfortunate. I hope it's not the printer and just the slicing. So I guess I'll have to try that. But yeah, it's making little blobs already. So I'm just gonna let it print for a little bit and if I see the blobs coming back, I'm just gonna cancel it and go ahead and slice my own. Alright guys, so same issue with this other print. It keeps stopping and making little blobs. So every time it pauses, it oozes out some filament and that's what those blobs are. So I went ahead and sliced my own model, which is a benchy, and hopefully that's gonna work out, but we'll find out in a second. Alright, so here we go. It still pauses. Okay, so there must be something wrong with the printer because it's not the files. It seems like it's confused or something. It's like it's low on memory or something. That's kind of weird. Or it can't read the SD card fast enough. That's what it looks like. All right, well, I'm gonna have to figure this out. Hopefully I can. And once I get that fixed, we will try again. All right, guys, so I figured out the problem, and it actually was a defective SD card. So the SD card that came with it was having trouble. I guess it wasn't able to put out the information fast enough. That's why it was pausing. So I grabbed my own SD card and put the Benchy on it, and that's what's printing now, and there's no hiccups or anything funny. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to transfer the files, the test ones that came in here, to my SD card, and maybe we can reprint that and check it out. But in any case, I got the Benchy starting to print here, and I guess I'm just gonna let it finish and we'll take a closer look at that. All right, so the printer's printing and everything seems to be just fine. So what I want to do is I want to try some of these features like the resume printing and the filament detection and see how they work. So for the power outage, we're going to go ahead and just flip the switch here. And this is how you can reach it right through here. I'm going to try to turn it off while it's in the middle somewhere so I don't have a blob on the outside. All right, so I just turned it off. So it just died right there. It's completely off now. I'm going to power it on and see what happens. Okay, so look at that. It says power loss recovery, stop print or resume print. So we're going to choose resume, and it should start back up again. So it was heating up the bed, and now it's heating up the nozzle. And there it goes. So I guess it's probably going to hold because it wants to know where it's at since the power loss. And we can see where that blob is there on the print. So you are going to get, you know, some kind of imperfection, obviously. So it does look like it's homing. All right, looks like it's going back to where it was. And there it goes. So it appears that the resume printing is working just like it's supposed to. So the next thing I want to try is I want to cut this filament and see if our detector picks up on it. Or another way to do it is be to unplug this thing, but it's hot glued here, so I think I'll have a hard time unplugging that. So I'm just going to snip it here on an angle, and it should eventually detect it and stop the print. All right, there it goes. So it actually moves out of the way. That's great, and it actually says printer paused, wait for filament unload. So it's pushing the filament out. So now it's beeping, and it's telling us to change the filament. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it out and stick the good end in, and then we can resume it by pressing this button. All right, so I put the filament in. So I'm going to hit the button. It says please wait, heating nozzle. So now it's purging. So it's kind of making a mountain of filament right there. So now we have more options to continue or purge more. We definitely don't need to purge more, so let's continue. And there it goes. Back to printing. And so these are great features to have, especially when you're going to do a very large print. As you guys can see, that Benchy is really small for the bed size. So once you start getting large prints, this is going to be very valuable to have filament detection and even power outage. So. Alright guys, and as you can see, I printed quite a bunch of stuff and it was all quite successful. So after figuring out the micro SD problem, everything went quite smooth, but I did have another issue and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's go ahead and check out this Benchy here, the first thing that we printed with the new SD card. And you guys can see it turned out very, very nice. Now there is a little bit of layering and it's actually very minor and it's mostly discoloration and it's kind of hard to show, but if we look at the reflection you can see it's you know, quite a nice print. And I noticed it's very accurate also because you guys look at this little box right here, there should be lines in there and you can see the little gaps in between the two walls. Yeah, that's usually means very accurate printer, and some printers actually fill in those gaps or they're very small. So yeah, this thing definitely has the precision, and it kind of reminds me, just looking at this Benchy, it reminds me a lot of the Ender 3. It's actually a little bit better than the Ender 3 as far as Salem skin and ghosting and vibrations. It's a little better on it, but it does look like it can benefit from some TL smoothers, but that has to be seen. And also the cooling is quite nice too. You can see on the arches here, you know, there's nothing really weird or any kind of blobs. It's quite clean. So very solid for sure right off the bat. So I also did print the other test file that came with the printer, and it's this creature looking thing. So I'm not sure exactly what this is, but it's quite a large print and it's quite heavy, so it took a little while. But it's a pretty good print to see the walls, and it turned out quite well also. I will have to say the slicing is not perfect here. because I'm seeing a lot better results on my prints. But overall, still a very good print and looks nice. And it did print on this raft, which pops right off quite easily. And strangely, this is what the bottom looks like. It's exposed completely, so quite interesting. So yeah, overall, not a bad print. So after that, I printed the calibration cube and this gear thing together, or the bearing. Let's take a closer look at the calibration cube. So the cool thing about the calibration cube is you get to see all the two axes and the Z obviously on top here. Usually the Y and the X is what you're looking for. So the X is this direction. And you guys can see it's quite nice. There's not any kind of major ghosting or ringing. And the Y has a little bit more ghosting. Kind of see the ghosting probably. The X is actually quite nice, practically nothing in there. But overall, very, very solid. And the bottom straight to the bed is perfect also. And you can kind of see on the clean wall here the small vibrations there are on the Y-axis. And then the X-axis is a little bit more cleaner. So very good quality. So here we have a bearing. So I like to print these to, you know, see the accuracy of the print, and this printer did very well. It's literally, I took it off the bed and just rotated it and it went. So that just tells me the precision on this thing is excellent. That's why this printer really reminds me of the Creality printers, because they're quite precise. And so this one was excellent. You can see there's, you know, really good tolerances, and it spins freely and perfectly. So no issues whatsoever. So I was very happy to see that this printer was very capable of this, which makes it really nice that it can do that good with a large bed like this. So the next thing I printed is quite large actually, and it's this tree frog, I think is what they call it. And it's definitely large. I enlarged it to 350% of what its original size was. Unfortunately, that's when I realized I did have another issue, and you guys can probably see it quite easily in these lines here. I had a bunch of under extrusion. Kind of here on this hand here, you can see a lot of that. And basically what was going on is this filament, exactly this pink filament, and this blue one is one brand. I'm not gonna say the name of the brand because I don't feel like it's really, you know, their fault. But what happened was the S8 here had a hard time keeping it hot enough and then feeding it through the nozzle. So I don't know if it was imperfection in the filament or just the printer was having a hard time. But you can see below here, I was trying to figure out as it was printing what was going on. And so everything above here, what I did was I added the temperature. So I think I started printing at like 205 or something on the nozzle, and then adjusted it up and down. And then I realized when I adjusted it down right here that it got a lot worse, that maybe the temperature was the issue. So I put it to 220, and that's what printed the rest of this frog. And as you guys can see, the rest of it is pretty much perfect. So because this thing is scaled like crazy, there's, you know, kind of imperfections in the scaling. But overall, a very, very solid print. It looks very nice, and, you know, it's quite large. Also to show that, you know, you can print quite large items on this bed. And this is, you know, not even that big compared to what you could print. So far so good. And that brings us to this boat. Also, filament needed to be hotter, which I knew about it. And I think I raised this one even higher. And I think that was a mistake because it started having discolorations. I don't know if you guys can see the discolorations in the color, but I think that's from just heat. Overall, it turned out very well. The bottoms turned out perfect on everything, obviously, because it's on glass. But as far as detail goes, it's quite nice and very good. I truly feel that this printer can benefit a lot from TL smoothers, or at least it looks like it, according to what I see on the printer. And I did have very, very minor stringing because of the extra heat. So after that, I figured, you know, I'd print my favorite two things, which is the astronaut and the spaceship that comes with them. Well, let's take a look at the astronaut here. So the astronaut turned out very nice. Any kind of lining you see, that's just discoloration of the filament. So this one was printed at 220 degrees also. And this was a different brand filament. So it looked like it printed perfect pretty much. There might be a little bit of a couple little defects here and there, but overall a very, very solid, beautiful print. And the helmet, you can kind of see on the reflection maybe. It's quite good also. There is a line right here somewhere, a small one here. But other than that, it's quite nice. So this is a rainbow filament. So this is why you can see some of those discolorations, because it was changing color. It went from gold to like this more of a dark orange look towards the top. So very nice. And last but not least, we had to print the spaceship, and this is quite tall to here. This is actually 380 millimeters, I think. So it's quite large. So, and it was printed in spiralized mode. And you guys can see that it turned out quite nice. So bottom looks perfect as usual. Sides look very nice. Now there is, you know, a vibration pattern in them a bit, but that's usual, the typical. And I feel like TL smoothers would definitely help with that. So overall it turned out very nice, except for the top here. Not sure exactly what happened, but when it got to this point right here, it started making everything rough. And this being a very small point, obviously wasn't able to continue with the form because it was melting the plastic, which usually happens. But it did finish, and it even made the ball on top. So overall, pretty nice looking spaceship here that was printed in silky silver. So overall, guys, as you can see, this printer is quite capable, and it really has everything you would want in a printer. So I definitely love the large bed size. Kind of gives you that unlimited feeling where you can print pretty much anything. Now for the glass, you know, you do have to use some kind of glue or maybe hairspray so the prints will stick. Taking the print off when the glass cools is quite easy. Plus this printer comes with all the features you would want, like filament detection, power failure resume, and it also does have thermal runaway protection. So overall, a very solid printer, and I feel like this would be an excellent printer for someone that wants a large printer and is just getting started and doesn't want to deal with all the assembly. This is quite a friendly printer for beginners, so thumbs up for that. So except for having the SD problem and the under extrusion issue, and that seemed like that was the filament issue, this printer seems very solid and pretty much ready to go out of the box. Now you do have to remember that you might have to adjust your little rollers. You know, you kind of have to learn that anyways if you're going to have a 3D printer, because you do want to learn how to maintain it as you use it over time. So yeah, I feel like SUNLU here knocked it out of the park, and the price that it goes for right now is a really good value, I feel like, for this kind of printer. So if you've been looking for a printer or want to get another extra one, I would definitely say check this thing out. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to have some links in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, then hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this and other things I do on this channel, I do a lot of 3D printing reviews, and there's a lot more to come. So if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button to see more. And as always, guys, thanks for watching the videos, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.